Hello, everyone.
Hello.
So welcome, everybody. This is the May 14th, 2020 Town of Monroe Planning Board Workshop Meeting. First order of business, Noreen, would you take a roll call, please, of who's in attendance?
Yes, Bonnie Franson,
Present?
Jason Sarinsky,
Here.
Jeff Manson,
Here.
John Allegro,
Here.
Anthony Vaccaro,
Here.
Lisa McQuaid.
Here.
Oh, I almost called the wrong. Pat Shea.
Here.
That is everyone.
Very good. Let's do the Pledge of Allegiance. Who had our flag last time?
Jeff.
All right, Jeff. Okay, I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one
nation, under God, indivisible,
with liberty,
with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Thank you, John. All right. First item on the agenda is 81 Raywood Drive subdivision. And I believe Joel and Larry are representing. And I see that Sarah Coleman has her hand raised, but we're not taking public comment at this time.
She's here for Verizon as well.
Okay, very good. All right, so gentlemen, tell us what's going on, where we are at this point.
Larry, you need to unmute.
And I know on,
Okay.
very good.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Larry Toro, Civil Tech Engineering. Mr. Joe Mann is in the corner there also. Start off, I hope everybody's safe and healthy.
Thank you, you too.
I guess the last time before the board, there were several comments from Sean, which this latest plan set addresses, I believe, for the most part. I don't know if you want to go through them item by item or just, I don't know if Sean has new comments or any additional.
Well, why don't we start with what changes have been made to the plans or what's been newly submitted, and then we'll get to both Ashley and Deshawn and then open it up to the board.
Okay. I mean, basically, we're really, as far as changes, I would say more along the lines of additions.
Okay.
Okay. Couple of comments. There was one about if it's a minor subdivision, that's something for the planning board's consideration, how to classify it. There was required to note a disturbance on the plans, which is now on the first sheet of 1.1 acres. And along with that, then it will trigger needing a stormwater plan, a SWIP, which we're in the process of generating that report. There was a comment about the utilities, needing comments from Orange County DPW and the Village of Curious Joel. Question about the grading, the area of the cul-de-sac and potential drainage. What we did, the cul-de-sac as it presently exists now, sheet flows off the property. So we haven't changed that. We haven't put any catch basins in. We just continued with a drop curb at the end of that extension to allow it to continue to sheet flow. If we put some drainage in or catch basins, the concern is then we have a point discharge as opposed to the sheet flow and really no way to tie it into. So that's why we propose to let it continue to sheet flow off. At the end of that cul-de-sac, I guess there was some landscaping requested at the last meeting, so we had put a row of pines in that area.
Okay.
A couple of items as far as the turnaround, and we had adequate area for the cars to turn around, so we labeled 24 foot between the parking space and the backup area on the plan. And then a couple of details. There was a note on the cross section, street cross section needed additional information regarding the subgrade. That's been added. A concrete curb detail that's been added. A note about structural reinforcement in the sidewalks. We provided that. And we did show number of trees to be removed, which is 11. So in order to mitigate that, we've shown on the plan the location of 11 red maple trees to be planted.
Okay.
All right.
1 second. In addition to that, we actually shared with the board a copy of the application to Orange County Sewer District Number 1 for the 3 sewer laterals for these 3 structures, and a copy of the executed agreement between the village of Kiryat and the property owner to hook up to the village water system. There is a water main running just next to the property, and it's shown on the plan where the connection will be. We'll need a couple easements. Some easements will go through on this. For example, lot 1 will have an easement on lot 3, and then we will need an easement from the neighbor. We are already in negotiations, and we will get the easements in the next, hopefully with the next submission or something.
So there's a 20-foot wide sanitary sewer easement, and there's a 40-foot wide water easement. Those are existing easements.
Correct.
Correct.
Okay. So you have the 12-inch water line, and then you have the sanitary line, and basically there'll be easements required to allow the utilities to extend over various properties, right?
It's actually one outside property, but outside of this subdivision. It's one property owner.
So it's the corner right back property.
Correct.
All right. My question would be, and this is just a question for Sean, rather than have that arrangement, should the utilities be located in the road and then travel up into each individual lot? I know this is sort of a short route, but is that the best location for the utilities?
For the sewer, it certainly is the best location because the grade drops off towards the back. And since that would be gravity, gravity sewer laterals, you want it to go with the grade to connect.
Okay.
So in my opinion, that's the right location. They show the water services all clustered together. I don't see any reason why they would need to have them come up through the front.
Okay.
They're proposing with ductile iron, which is should last 75 to 100 years. So,
Okay.
Yeah, that's actually village of Kiryat requirement. So.
Okay. All right. At this point, Sean, did you have additional comments?
I do. I don't. Since this is the workshop, I don't have. I didn't provide the hard copy, but we can go through them. Nothing major.
Do you want to bring the plan up? Can you bring the plan up while we're?
Yes, I actually have it on my screen. Okay, I'm actually on the grading utility plan right now.
Okay.
The first one is about the SWIP and that the plan identifies the 1.1 acres. Larry already said that his office is working on preparing a SWIP. The EAF identifies the total disturbance as 0.9 and it's identified as 1.1. That's just a coordination thing between the EAF and the plans. About the water services, they are proposed as 3-inch ductile iron. I just had a question why they couldn't just be 3/4 or 1-inch copper services. 3 inches kind of large, in my opinion, for single family homes.
Well, we just-
Hold on, guys, hold on just real quick.
Yep.
Just as a reminder before we even started, we are recording the meeting, correct?
We are, yes.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, carry on.
Do you want to go through the comments or you want responses as you're going? How would you like to handle that?
So you could provide comments or responses as we go along, any reactions you might have.
Okay. Well, as far as the services, yes, they're a little large, but I'm going what Mr. Mann said a few minutes ago. It's a village requirement. We could check with them if they accept something smaller, but I don't know off the top of my head. We can.
There's no concern with that. It just jumped out at me that 3 inch was kind of large for a single family home.
Right, understand.
I will discuss with the water superintendent. It depends. Sometimes they like to have it because it's more safe for leaks, because the meter is at the house. If there's any leaks between the main and the house, we're just losing water.
Sure.
So I will check with them to see what the smallest we can go. Definitely.
Thank you.
My next one was about the easements, and that Ashley will have to review the easements when they're provided. The next one,
And just real quick, Ashley, when would you want to see them as we progress through the process, or the sooner the drafted, the better?
I mean, well, ultimately, anything like that would be a condition that would have to be satisfied, prior to signing the plat. So the sooner, sooner they get them, they could always submit them and we could review them prior to that. But if not, it would always be a condition to satisfy before the plat signs.
All right,
Okay, thank you.
Right, if the layout seems to be acceptable and this is where we're going forward, we can by all means provide the descriptions for your review.
We may
Okay.
need to, I don't know who else, may need to comment on that layout other than just Sean. I know we had sent out the secret notice of intent and to be involved in interest agencies. So I'm just not sure whether other, the county or other entities are going to have comments that might affect that. So I would say maybe hold off just for right now, but.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll wait for county sewer comments probably.
the next comment was about that the application for the connection to the county sewer district was provided, and that the board should receive a copy of the approved application once available. The next one was about the trees on the grading and utility plan, which is before you. There are trees provided with their DVH. Some are proposed to be removed, which are the trees with the X's shown through them.
Mhm.
I just asked that the applicant affirm that the ones not designated to be removed are going to remain.
Okay.
Additionally, the EAF says that there's potential habitat for Indiana bat and long-eared bat, so that the applicant should be aware of the clearing restrictions.
Right.
Yeah, it should be included as a note on the subdivision plan with regard to the clearing restrictions. And Ashley, we sent the lead agency notice to DEC.
Yes, I'm just going to pull that up now and double check, but I believe we did because of that.
Okay. So they'll provide us with whatever comments, given the size of this particular project and the adjoining area. They'll probably just simply restrict when the tree cutting can occur. I don't think that they'll ask for more, but we'll see what the response is.
Yeah, I think typically as long as the applicant's willing, acceptable to that restriction, that they wouldn't need anything further.
It's basically not cutting trees from March 31st till November 1st. So.
Yeah, for the benefit of the board members, so DEC typically will restrict the time frame when trees can be cut so that the roosting habitat or nesting areas are not impacted. So the clear cutting is really limited to almost the winter months when the bats are back, in hibernation in the caves. So that's why the limitation is imposed. Okay.
Okay. As Larry had mentioned, there are these 6 white pines here at the end of the proposed extension of the roadway, as the board had requested last time. And then these.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we should see if that's okay, because is that going to still be in town right away?
It will
Yes.
be, they are proposed to be in the right of way, yes.
Okay, so we'll just make sure that the highway superintendent takes a look at it. I would prefer maybe something that's a little hardier, maybe some spruces and mixed up, not entirely in a row like that, but let's first see what the highway superintendent says about providing some screening there.
As far as the road, just so you know, I tried to put them as close to the property line and back as far as possible. So if there was an issue with where we wanted to push the snow, we left them as
Yeah.
much room as we could.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, we maybe do something a little that just is more of a, maybe a bit of a U in it, or we'll figure it out.
Right.
Thank you.
Or even possibly here as well, you know,
Yeah,
add a little.
yeah, just to add some trees in that area.
Sure. And then additionally, the RM inside these circles, those are red maples proposed throughout the
So they'll have some street trees, which will be nice. Do we have a planting plan, or just the diameter of the trees, what'll be planted?
they're
Just what I-
called out down here as 2.5-inch caliper red maples.
Okay, thank you.
And then the next one was question 19 on the EAF was left unanswered. I believe that's about the solid, there was a previous solid waste disposal site on the site. And then that was it.
Okay.
Ashley, do you have any comments?
Sure. So I think just to touch on what Shawna just said about the EAF, I do believe we had that corrected before the lead agency notice went out. That both the disturbance was corrected to reflect the 1.1 and also question 19.
Yes, it's here. I see it here on the EAF.
Yeah, they were both corrected beforehand.
Very good. Other comments? I know we've discussed this before. It is subject to GML review. It has to be referred to the county. It'll also have to be sent to the Village of Kiers Joel and the Town of Palm Tree before a public hearing. Already talked about the SWIP. The plan should go to the highway superintendent again because they've been modified. As far as classifying the subdivision as major or minor, it is major because it requires an extension of municipal facilities. So it requires an extension of Raywood Drive and also of the Village of Kiers Joel water. So it would have to be classified as a major subdivision, but the board can waive the requirement to submit a cluster plan since it's less than 5 acres.
Okay. So that's something we need to do formally.
Yes, you'll have to do that at some point.
Okay.
You just do it by motion if you want, if you're ready to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I think we were moving along with this particular layout. So I think that we could entertain a motion to waive submission of a cluster subdivision. So I will make that motion.
Add in there that it's a motion to classify it as a major subdivision and then waive the requirement to submit.
Okay, so I will make a motion that the subdivision be classified as a major subdivision and that we waive the requirement to submit a cluster layout. May I have a second?
I'll second that.
Jeff Manson seconded the motion, and Noreen, could you poll the board?
You're muted, Noreen.
I remembered, thank you. Oh, Bonnie Franson,
Aye.
Jeff Manson,
Aye.
John Allegro,
Aye.
Jason Sterinsky,
Aye.
Lisa McQuaid,
Aye.
Anthony Vaccaro,
Aye.
and Pat Shea.
Aye.
Very good.
Thank you.
So motion carries. So We've classified this as a major subdivision. Ashley, for major subdivisions, does that mean we have to grant both preliminary plat approval and then final approval separately, or do we have the opportunity to grant preliminary
I don't
and do
believe,
final?
I have to check your code, but typically you could do both at the same time.
Okay,
But I'll have to check your specific code to see if there's any distinction based on that. I knew the cluster requirement, that was one of the elements of a major subdivision, but I don't recall anything about that.
okay. We can look at that in terms of process for the next meeting. It would just, advance the project. But I think in part it's going to depend on where we are and if the applicant wants preliminary plat approval and needs to get any other additional approvals in the interim. So, all right, Ashley, any other comments?
You already talked about the SWIP and the drainage. That's all going to have to be shown with the SWIP. As far as we had talked about last time, the tree plan. So they did add what trees are being removed and what's being added. There's also some other requirements in that tree preservation law. It's 57-84. And it goes through, there's some notes that have to be added. You have to show buffers for trees that you're keeping in certain circumstances. So if Larry could just go to that section and just make sure that the next submission includes all that with respect to the trees, it's 57-84.
Okay, thank you.
It also will need to be referred to the Monroe Conservation Commission.
Okay. Joel, do you think there's any need to provide some kind of screening or landscaping between the house that sits closer to the street and then the houses to the rear, just to give them maybe some privacy?
I don't see an issue with that. So what type of, we should put like a couple of pines?
Again, I think some evergreens or some plantings or just something to kind of break up the three houses and provide some screening for that rear yard.
Valid point. We will add something.
Okay, thank you. All right. So with that, do any of the planning board members have comments? Anthony?
Just wondering, because this is a tight site, there are a lot of utilities and odd configurations. If we should make allowances or show on the plan where the other utilities are going to go, if they're going to have underground electric or overhead electric or gas, because if you're going to have a planting plan and you're going to try to preserve trees, we don't want to have to take down trees to provide or to allow for that.
Larry, where do you think the electric would come in? And I thought maybe we have an underground requirement, but
I was gonna say, I suspect the town probably has as far as the electric underground. Gas, I'd have to check if there's even gas in Raywood Drive. I don't know
okay.
if it is. And that would be the only two utilities. That would be the gas and electric, and they would come right off. The electric, I suspect, obviously off of Raywood Drive, and the gas, if it exists, in the same location. But I'll have to look into the gas issue.
If there's no gas, would they potentially be served by propane, or they would just use electric, all electric?
We'll look into that. I just need to look. Let me see first if there is no gas.
Or oil, right, or oil.
Yeah. So we'll look into
Okay.
regarding the electric, I'm dealing now on other projects in Toronto, Rockland. There will be basically meters probably for each two buildings. So they will probably have 2 meters, one for 2 lots, and this one lot will probably need a separate, not meter, I'm sorry, I'm talking about the transformers. So it's the small green transformers. So probably one for 2 lots, and then we'll have one of the 3 lots will have a separate one. So we will locate that the way it matches the Rockland requirements, but we'll put it on the plan.
On the first lot, the sidewalk, so I'm assuming that if you go electric, you'd want to go like next to the sidewalk or very close to that. And then I see the sidewalk is very close to a 16th tree. So I'm just wondering, is that a conceptual thing? It looks like it would cut right through the roots. If I'm wondering if the sidewalk should be located so it weaves between those trees.
You're talking about
On
on
what,
On the
which
one on the
lot?
left, right there, yep.
lot 1. Well, yeah, I
Okay.
mean, the walkway isn't, we can shift it, to the right, the walkway to get it further away from that 16-inch tree. That's not a problem.
Okay, so there'll be provisions for protecting that during construction?
Right. Yep.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any comments or questions?
Yeah, I do. I'm trying to get a little clarity, Joel, around. I see the property is owned by Bias A Properties Inc. With a owner of Meyer Tesler.
Yes.
Is it Mr. Tesler who's developing these sites, or is it Brock and Mann who's developing? The entity disclosure is for Brock and Mann and has yourself and Mr. Mann as the owners. But if Mr. Meyerson is actually the developer, the entity disclosure should probably show his entity and his information, and then if there are other officers of that corporation.
Let me clarify this. When we submitted the application, Mark Tesler is the owner, and he's going to develop. He's actually a developer. He's going to develop these 3 properties. I'm just the applicant on this, as per doing consulting and planning. I'm the applicant. At the submission, we got a request from the attorney to submit for our firm also entity disclosure. So we did that, but we have nothing to do with the property besides that we are presenting that to the planning board.
Right, you're just the agent for the corporation that's the
Correct.
developer.
Correct.
So do we have 2 entity disclosures, one for Brock and Mann and one for Bias A?
Yes, we submitted for.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
That makes more sense. In relation to the EAF, and again, I don't know if these have been covered already. In item number 2, I just noticed where it lists Village of Curious Joel Board of Treasures. I think there's a typo in Curious where 2 letters are switched. And is it Board of Trustees for Curious Joel?
It would be a village has a board of trustees.
Right. It reads Board of Treasures.
That looks like
The
a
trustees.
Okay. And then number 13, this is a little bit of a technical question. So I see any portion of this proposed action or lands adjacent have wetlands, and the answer is yes. And then B is answered no, because you're not altering anything. So then there's a question, if yes, identify the wetlands and water bodies and the extent of alterations. Is that if yes referring to 13B or both 13A and B? Ashley, could you clarify that for me?
Sure, that's just referring to 13B.
Okay. So
Yes,
then
and
we
if
don't.
you're going to alter what's identify the wetlands and then the extent of the alteration.
So then the only other question I had in relation to 17B, there's a description, if yes, drainage will be directed to existing drainage facilities on adjacent properties. So I assume that since the land kind of runs downhill to the eastern corner, that the runoff would run down that way. I didn't see a detail in the plan of how that that drainage was going to be directed and where the alternate facilities are. I'm just hoping you could tell me a little bit more about what the plan is for that.
But I said earlier, basically what it does now is it sheet flows as opposed to collecting it and putting it in a pipe and having a concentrated flow where we have nowhere to go to.
Mhm.
So what we're going to do is continue to let it sheet flow as it does right now. As far as the increase in pervious on the site itself, which we didn't get into, and it'll be in the SWIP, the seat in the back will be oversized to handle the roofs and the parking areas for that additional runoff. So it's really just going the way it goes now, with the exception of that little addition to the extension for the extension.
So that'll resolve most of the issue coming off the roofs, which is most of the impervious
Right.
surface. Oh, all right. Got it. Thanks.
How deep are those dry wells?
Let me see. I He has them on the plan.
And I guess I'm just wondering for consideration of real storage space, and if, you know, the groundwater table is high, how much is active storage space for rainwater in the roofs? If that was
Anthony, as part of the SWIP, the applicant will have to do some basically percolation tests for the dry wells to see what rate of infiltration that those dry wells will get.
Thank you.
For our subdivisions require house relocation notes. I don't know if they're on there yet or not. But just be aware and add them to the plans.
House relocation notes?
Yes, it's in the zoning. Okay. And Joel, do you have any sense of the houses, what they're going to look like? Do you have any kind of concept plans for them? Just curious.
We are working on that now. I hope at the next submission I will be able to provide it to you.
Okay,
We
thank you.
need to go through ARB. Is that correct? We spoke about-
Actually, I'm not sure. I was just curious about the concept plan itself.
Mhm.
I'm not sure for individual single-family dwellings if we need to go through ARB or if we do for subdivisions.
I believe you do for subdivisions, not for an
Yeah.
individual single family, but if it's for a subdivision.
Then we
but I
do.
will check that as well.
But I
Anybody
will,
else?
I will provide you the plans either way.
Bonnie, can I just ask about one more thing?
Sure, of course.
So I was looking at the, I guess on the third page, the trees that are being removed. And there were two that I wanted to ask about if I could. On lot number 2, at the western corner of where the parking spaces are, there's one coming out. And I was wondering, I just thought that would be a good one to preserve if you could, because the house on lot 2 is so much closer to the street. It would just add a little more screening along with the red maples. I didn't know if there was a way to either slightly reconfigure the parking spaces, or if it was, even though it's fairly close to the parking space, not so close, not knowing what the measurement in distance is, that could be preserved. So I'd ask you to consider that. And I was also wondering on lot 1, just over into lot 1 from where the dry wells are on lot 3, there's a tree. Like there's one on lot 3 that's like right in the dry well, but the one that's on lot 1 between the houses on 1 and 3, I was wondering if that one might be able to be preserved, or it might. I didn't know if it was too close to the dry well, or again, I don't know what the distance between the tree itself and the dry well is.
Well, similar to the issue with the walkway that was asked about earlier with the 16-inch tree on lot 1, it'd be the same thing in regard to the trees you're just talking about during construction.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we can show them to remain, but then it makes it a little difficult. If they wind up unfortunately tearing out half of the root system, that it doesn't make it. Because like the one on lot 2, in the front lot 2, it's right off the edge of the parking. So.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted those considered. Thank you.
Too, though, Larry, is can that parking area maybe be reconfigured so that it wouldn't, there wouldn't be the risk that they would be damaged during the construction?
I'll go over with Joel. I mean, we'd have to see if we can shift where his doorway is coming in, into the front entrance of the house there, the walkway. That'll be the only way we can shift it.
I think when you look at it, see what the condition of the tree is.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll take a look on this and we'll see if we can reconfigure that based on the.
Yeah, but if it's in good condition, if it's normally we would have the CAC go out there. We do have our tree regulations, but if it is in good condition, then we want to try and preserve what we can.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, so I think at this point, the applicant still has some revisions that need to be made. We'll be checking with the highway superintendent about the plantings. Maybe Sean, you could touch base with them. We look forward to the next submission with the additional information. And then at some point, we should get any correspondence we're going to get from our lead agency request. I believe it was sent out on May 6th, or that's the date on it, I believe. So it won't be until June that we can actually officially act as lead agency. But ultimately, you know, we're moving toward getting the plans in complete enough form so that we can set a public hearing. Is there anything else, Ashley, procedurally?
The general municipal law 239 referral.
Okay.
So we could get that out as well. We did send to the county as an interested agency. We sent the lead agency notice, but didn't actually do that referral yet. So the earlier they're involved in the process is always a good thing.
So do you think we should send this version or the next iteration?
I don't think, just chime in, there's nothing of substance, for lack of a better term, that's going to change here. It's really just some additional detail and notes and things of that nature. I mean, the layout, the proposal is going to be what's on these plans now.
So I don't have a problem having this sent out to the Orange County Planning Department for GML review. And frankly, if there's any major changes, then it'll be sent back. So
right.
We can have it sent to Orange County Board. Is that, I don't think we have to vote on it. Is that okay? Are you all right with sending this to the Orange County Planning Department for their review?
Yes.
Everybody okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Yes,
All
I'm
right.
good.
So, okay. So Noreen, if you would package that together so we can get it up to the county for review.
Yes, I will.
Okay.
Any additional plans, Noreen, or you have enough?
I don't have any of them at my residence.
Noreen, and
I'm
I
gonna
can help with that. So what we did for the general municipal law, for the lead agency notice, we printed them out on 11 by 17 size paper instead of plan sheets. So I know the county's accepting things electronically now as well. They still, I think, require a hard copy, but we could send them. And then if they need full size, we could just get it to them.
So Ashley, you'll take care of that?
Yes.
Okay. And then Noreen, you can fill out the form.
Yeah, I'll do the forms and everything, get the letter and everything, and then,
And send it to Ashley.
yep.
Okay, perfect.
Just going forward procedure, so we cannot schedule a public hearing for the next meeting now because he didn't accept the lead agency. Is that something we need to wait for the next meeting?
I don't know whether it will be, even the next meeting, it depends, but you can't have the public hearing until seeker is complete. So of course you have to first become the lead agency before then you could complete seeker. So
okay,
that's really the next step.
Right, so we have to do our seeker determination or negative declaration before we can open the public hearing. And we can literally do both on the same evening, but we need to be assured that we're ready to issue a negative declaration. So at this point, we can't even do that because we're not officially lead yet.
Which will be discussed at the next workshop meeting probably, and then we'll see.
Yeah.
Depends on the time.
I think if we're the lead agency, then we could look at what we have. We can review the part 2. We could see if there's any additional analyses needed, and what we need to get to a point of making the seeker determination. And essentially for the planning board, the seeker determination is, the negative declaration is where we determine that there aren't going to be any significant adverse impacts. Any environmental impact statement isn't required, and we can issue the negative declaration. If we issue a positive declaration, that would mean that we anticipate the applicant preparing an environmental impact statement because there's one or more significant adverse impacts that need to be evaluated. So at this point, given the size of the project, information that's been submitted, I'm not anticipating we're going to go in the direction of a positive declaration, but we do have to go through the form, and we do have to make sure that everything is evaluated before we make our determination. Okay. All right. Anything else?
For me.
You good? All right.
Appreciate your time.
Joel, you good?
Yes, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay.
Stay
All right.
healthy.
So thank you. You too.
Night.
So with that, have a good night. The next item on the agenda is Monroe Commons. And who's here for that? I think we had Mr. Monroe who was going to be here.
Yes.
We also have, I'm just looking at the attendance list, John Dahlgren.
Okay, I thought Caleb was also. Is he here for that? Okay, I see Caleb now. Trying to expand my Zoom screen here. John and Joel, you're here for Monroe Commons?
No comments too, yes.
Okay, and then I don't see Jay.
Neither do I. Maybe he's on listeners.
Jay, if you're one of the attendees, can you raise your hand if you're a phone call in? Or Joel, do you know if Jay was going to be joining us?
Yeah, as per my information, he's going to join us. Let me see if I can get someone here to reach him.
I know we did share a link with him earlier today.
Yes.
Ashley, do we have a lot to do with Verizon?
No, so they were really just on so that you could appoint the consultant. You haven't yet appointed a wireless consultant. You haven't had this application before you yet. So
Okay.
they're still going before the ZBA, and the ZBA did hire a consultant, but they were, I think, from my understanding, somewhat cabining their review to more of the ZBA issues. So it would make
Okay.
sense for the planning board to hire that consultant and have them start their review as well, just to keep things moving.
Guys, should we, if you're waiting for Jay Monroe, should we maybe just take up Verizon first if it's not a lengthy conversation?
I'm good with it. Caleb?
You're okay with that?
Yeah, can we?
Okay. So why don't we, for the moment, switch from Monroe Commons? We'll take that up again and just switch to agenda item 2.3, which is Verizon Wireless, section block and lot number 2-1-36. And Ashley, why don't you lead us through what we need to do and where we are with the overall process?
Sure. So this is an application for a cell tower. It's
Excuse me, before we go, is there Scott Olson out there, Sean?
Yes,
I saw him.
promoting.
Okay.
Okay.
Because he's Verizon.
Yes,
Okay.
I'm here.
Scott, is there anyone else that's here for you or with you
Is-
for the Verizon application?
Sarah Coleman is here also. And
Yes, she's
unfortunately, my Zoom is restarting like every couple of minutes. So I may be disconnected, but it reconnects pretty quickly. So
Okay. So actually, so maybe Scott, you want to give us an overview of the cell tower itself?
sure, it's not what you would, it's, while it's a tower, it's not a traditional cell tower. We refer to it as a small cell. It's literally, it is 67 feet tall, but it's a utility pole. It's a wooden utility pole. It's not going to be your standard steel monopole, which are normally 80 to 150 feet tall, give or take. It's sourced from the company that makes utility poles. It's just going to be a little taller than your typical utility pole. We'll have 2 antennas on the top of it. It's going to be located in the front of the existing water tank building, a water tank structure. The water tank structure is approximately 60 feet tall or so. We're trying to improve capacity and coverage in the eastern part of town, and this is one of the most, well, I'm sorry, the least intrusive ways we can accomplish that. So we applied for a use and area variance with the Zoning Board of Appeals, as well as site plan approval from the Planning Board. And we public. Go ahead.
So in the submissions that we've received to date, I haven't seen, unless I don't have it here, I see the application, but do we have a site plan? Or has that been given to the ZBA and we don't have it yet?
You should have everything. I submitted, I think it was January 7th. I may be wrong on the number of copies, but numerous copies of the planning board application with the site plan and supporting materials, as well as a separate area and use variance application.
Bonnie, I do have a set of plans on the screen if you'd like.
Isn't that the plans inside the big book that we got?
Yeah, so Bonnie, what happened was, so they had submitted, and I think it had, I think it was in a binder or some kind of document, all as a big package. And it was, I think, titled Planning Board and Zoning Board application, but it really was just the Zoning Board application. So there was some back and forth on that. There wasn't enough copies for the board, so I think they may have been distributed already, but they now have submitted the planning board application as well. And I guess it would be helpful to know, maybe Scott could just give us an update as far as where they are in the zoning board process. I can't recall whether they had a public hearing or.
No, the public hearing is scheduled for the 26th of this month. So we'll have that then, and we'll go from there. We'll see if there are any other issues, if there are any real issues. There's only 1 or 2 issues the zoning board raised, and we've addressed those, but we haven't had a chance to really discuss them with the ZBA in a public meeting yet.
So I just want to ask Pat, because you're our newest member, do you have the binder? Do you recall receiving this?
I did not receive it.
Okay, so Noreen, we should check to see if we have any extra binders.
Sorry, I thought I was muted. I am muted. I believe I have 1 or 2 more in the office. I think I had one set aside for the new member when he came on, but he came on after we were quarantined.
Okay.
So once I'm back in the office, I can get that together. I have a bunch of things in a corner for him.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so Sean is showing the location of the proposed, that's the water tank location. And the pole would be located next to it, you're saying, Scott?
Correct, in the front part of it, yes. Because the primary purpose of this facility is to serve land basically in front of, and you can kind of see there's a part of a strip center right there. It's pretty big. It's got the Walmart, it's got a Best Buy, it generates a lot of wireless traffic. So we're trying to hit that area and other areas, but we're not looking to go up into the village at this point.
Okay. Very good. So we're not doing a review at this point in time. We just need to authorize to retain the consultant for the review.
Yes, that way they could start. I mean, they have reviewed it already from the zoning board perspective, but to have them review it, on behalf of the planning board too, that way we'll be ready, to jump in once they come before you. So the consultant that the zoning board had appointed was Cityscape Consultants, I believe. Let me just double check the name. It is Yes, it was Cityscape.
I recall
Consultants
Cityscape.
Incorporated.
Right. And I'll tell you, nowadays it's difficult to find consultants that specialize in RF engineers that specialize in this. So we did actually have to look for this consultant because we did reach out to a few people. So with that, I would entertain a motion to retain Cityscape consultants for purposes of reviewing the Verizon application. Would someone like to make a motion to that effect?
I'll make a motion.
Who was that?
Anthony.
Anthony, okay, thank you. May I have a second?
A second.
That's John?
Yeah.
Okay. Noreen, can you call the vote?
I'm just seeing,
I'm sorry, somebody's saying something? I got, there you go. You wanted roll call, Bonnie?
Yep.
Okay, Bonnie Franson,
Aye.
Jason Sorinsky. John Allegro,
Aye.
Anthony Vaccaro,
Aye.
Lisa McQuaid,
Aye.
Jeff Manson,
aye.
Pat Shea.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, so with that, we've retained Cityscape consultants. Even though we're formally doing it as a planning board, Ashley, the ZBA, since they've also retained them, Cityscape probably has the plans and everything else they need at this point.
Okay, so then I was trying to mess with it. I did something.
You're muted. There you go.
Realize that they should have everything. I'll work with Noreen. We'll make sure they get everything that they need.
Okay.
And hopefully, their review, hopefully they should have enough of a background already that they should be able to provide some comments quickly.
Okay, and then the ZBA is doing their review, and after they're done, it will come to the planning board?
Yes, so they require a use variance, so they can't get any approval from this board, of course, until they have that, and I guess an area variance, I think Scott had said as well. So then they will, I mean, you could, I'm not sure, I think he had said the public hearing starting this coming zoning board meeting. You as a planning board can still, put them on the next agenda if you want to start reviewing things. Depending on what happens there, you could see that might make sense.
Yeah, so I think then we will put them on our next workshop agenda. That'll give everybody a time to familiarize themselves with the application package. Pat hopefully will have his set of plans and package, and then we can entertain it. So, we're starting that process, even if it's not quite complete with the ZBA yet. All right. Scott or Sarah, do you have any comments or anything you want to let us know before we move on?
Just want to say thank you. We appreciate being put on the next agenda. I did raise an issue with David, the attorney for the ZBA, about the shot clock. Ashley, I don't know if he has spoken to you about that yet. We don't have to talk about it tonight, but I think it's important to talk about it. We've asked the town just to extend the shot clock because there are some pretty strict rules with it. We feel that it's getting close to the time, even though the planning board hasn't officially reviewed the application. We just want to extend it. We're not looking for anything other than an extension because we know you're not going to be done with it for a few months at least. So Ashley, I don't know if you and I can talk about that.
I had spoken with Dave about that, and things have then of course, became fairly crazy. So I think, of course, the planning board's gonna be moving along with the application, and we'll, keep it moving. And as far as, shot clock purposes, I think, it would be, very agreeable to pushing that out. I don't know that we need an actual, agreement in writing as to that, but I think that if we're, continuing, you're continuing, and we're continuing to keep things moving, I think that we should all be on the same page, and that should be fine.
Yeah, in no way am I
Scott?
suggesting that the board is not. I just, my company, the shot clock is very favorable to us. So they've always told us, just extend it if you can, because we don't ever want to have any issues down the road. That's all. But I'm sorry, Bonnie.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, Scott, for the benefit of the planning board members in the audience, could you explain the shot clock?
To
For
the
those who
best of
don't
my
know.
ability, because it's been complicated, but basically the FCC has come out and said these types of facilities are fairly important generally, and they want to make sure that the local municipalities finish their review of these facilities in a certain period of time. For new towers, macro sites, it's 150 days from receipt of the application. For co-locations, it's 90 days. And there are different timeframes for small cells. So there are like 4 different timeframes out there. But it basically says it has to get done on a fairly quick time frame, because in the old days, we spent sometime 3 years reviewing these applications, and the FCC finally said that's a little too long. So they came up with this rule that they promulgated several years ago.
Right. So, and it really is just about almost like subdivision regulations where there are timeframes. It's trying to adhere to the timeframes and doing a timely review, because especially newer cell towers that are high and visible can have their controversies, and they have in the past taken a long time to review, and so the FCC weighed in and established these timeframes. But we will work toward its review, and we'll get you on the next workshop agenda and move the process along.
And we appreciate that. Thank you.
So anybody have comments or questions before we let Scott and Sarah go? No, we're good for now? All right. So thank you very much. Stay safe.
Thank you. You too.
We'll see you next workshop meeting.
Sounds good. Thank
Thank
you.
Mhm.
Thank
Bye
you.
now.
Bye-bye. All right. So next item on the agenda, going back to Monroe Commons.
It does look like Jay's now in the attendees.
Yeah, I think I did see him. Okay. All right. So do we have everybody, Jay, Caleb, who needs to be on?
Looks like it.
Okay. Maybe you want to introduce John Dahlgren and his role in this,
Yes.
as he's a new attendee.
Yes, John Dahlgren is of Tim Miller Associates. He will be our planner for the project. So we're having him on today. Just to purpose of us being on for tonight is just to discuss the next step of SECRA. I had submitted the revised sketch site plan, revised EAF, and revised agency list a few weeks ago with the intent of, filing a notice of intent and distributing the documents. So I don't know if we get that document, but was there a notice of intent that was created? Would we be able to?
Yes, so
see
that was actually circulated, I believe it was this Monday after we got all the revisions to the AF that we went back and forth on. And I could, if you want, send you a copy of that, that package that went out electronically. I could send you that.
Awesome.
So yes, we have started the SECRA process, and then in 30 days, we'll be able to assume lead agency, provided there isn't anyone challenging that, and start to hone in on the plan and specifically seeker and what direction we're going in, as far as if we're going to require an environmental impact statement for the project. Sean, were there any new plans or any new submissions that you reviewed that you want to comment on?
There were new plans. They weren't significantly different from the plans that were last submitted. The only thing
Okay.
I really note, sorry.
No, I didn't say anything.
Oh, sorry. The only thing that was different was the table near the top that divides the floor areas into common space versus the usable areas were slightly different, which affected the parking calculation. Some of the parking in the front yard, or I should say, the parking that was in the front yard setback was pulled out of that setback, and so the configuration of the parking changed slightly, but other than that, there wasn't anything significant that had changed.
Okay.
Just
Ashley, do you
one
have any? Sure, Sean,
Sorry.
go ahead. Sorry.
Just one thing I know the board had requested at the last meeting, which I didn't see in the submission, was the narrative.
Okay.
So we're still working on it, and it will be submitted. Wasn't a chance between the last meeting and this meeting. We at this meeting, as Caleb said, we really want to discuss the procedure of the seeker going forward. The next item, I think Jay and John will talk more on that. If we are moving forward with the scoping, what type of studies, for example, a traffic study, which intersections the planning board will want us to study, so we can start the work behind the background work for the secret process in advance time, and so you don't need to wait for that going forward.
So I think from my perspective, we have been looking at consultants to retain, reaching out to some traffic engineers, wetland scientists, and others. So I think the next step is to get together our list of consultants, which is why we had asked you about who your list would be, who was included on your team, so that we can put our team together, and that team, we want them in place at the time that we start the scoping process, because they'll be advising us and helping us in developing the scope and ensuring that we're examining the appropriate topics as part of that evaluation. So from my perspective, we need to get a team together. So I will work with Ashley and with Sean to put the team together and bring that back to the board so the board can approve the team. If any members of the board have any suggestions as far as team members, in addition to those that we've already started to research, just send them along to Noreen so she can circulate it to myself and to Sean and to Ashley. So we've started to do that work, Joel, and like I said, to get our team together.
Yeah, at one of the meetings, I think you listed basically your suggestions. So the question is, if, let's say at the planning board meeting in the next week, if you can get trying to finalize at least a portion or all of them, so we can move forward here.
Bonnie or Sean, do you remember who was the traffic engineer for the Bald Hill subdivision? They probably have a stockpile of information when they did their traffic study for that.
How recent was that traffic study? I'm not sure I would trust that data more now, given the amount of time that's passed between project inception and now.
Well, they would certainly have to update any traffic information. Bald Hill was before my time, so I don't recall who the traffic engineer was, but we have reached out to Mazer Engineering or Mazer Consulting. They have Phil Greeley and others that came from John Collins Engineers. They got absorbed by Mazer. And they also have represented the county and are familiar with Nininger Road. So I think they're kind of high on the list as far as who we might retain because they have familiarity with the area. Wetlands people, there's a group of people from, well, I know him from actually one of my municipalities. He's a wetland scientist, David Hill. You know, he's one of the people we're thinking of. Mazer Consulting in general for those items that McGoey Hauser Nedsel won't or can't do or don't have it in-house. We may reach out to Mazer in that regard. And then I think, Ashley, we're just talking about having a planner on board to kind of oversee the process and the team along with you. So that was the other consideration as far as who we would retain.
Yes, and I don't know whether you have anyone in mind for that. I, of course, completely would defer to you in that.
Yeah, I know you had mentioned Nina Peak, and there's some others, so we'll definitely put that team together, Joel, so that we have them in place. The hydrogeologist, Joel, remind me, were you using?
We're using Tom Cusack.
Right, so
He's with WSP, I think. I think he's with WSP.
right, so our one issue, and we'll have to see if Mazer has the ability, or if we bring in another group that I'm familiar with that's getting involved in a project in South Blooming Grove. Our group, which was Lewis Berger and Associates, was also bought out by WSP. And so the people we normally would use, I think that'd be problematic since even though they were at one time two separate firms, they're now all under the WSP umbrella. And we probably have to bring someone else in for that purpose. And Sean, you could talk to Mike Weeks for the contact information.
Yeah, Mike Weeks and I have actually met with Mike Gillespie, the hydrogeologist for South Blooming Grove. So.
Is he Alpha Geosciences? I'm trying to remember the name.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So
WSP was the traffic consultant for the town on the Bald Hill project.
WSP, I don't know, maybe Lewis Berger did it. WSP, I don't think would have been doing Bald Hill.
Okay.
But we can look into that. We'll
It's
have to look
okay.
at actually the
Their
old documents.
suggestions are good. I'm good. I'm not trying to be
Okay.
contrarian.
Okay. So again, we'll bring that team together and then we'll make the recommendation to the board, Sean, Ashley, and I. Okay. And again, if there's just consultants you happen to know, please let me know. Caleb, did you have additional comments or questions, or Jay or John or Joel?
I don't have. I'm good.
Okay. So we're moving along. Again, we have circulated the notice of intent to be the lead agency for the seeker action. We will be hiring and putting together our consultant team. We have to wait the 30 days to hear back as far as lead agency status and if we can assume lead agency. And once that happens, we can start fleshing out a scope to begin the seeker process. Ashley, it's not uncommon for the applicant to take a first stab at putting the scoping document together and then we subsequently revise it. Do you think that would be reasonable?
Yeah, I think that would make sense to start out with that path. That once you make your determination of significance, assuming of course it's a pause deck that would require then the scoping document they could prepare. You'd have to talk about then whether you would want to hold a public scoping session and how you go about that. The logistics obviously in the current times make that a little more difficult, but it could still happen. It'll just be via video conference like this.
Okay. So at this point, even though we're not lead agency, so therefore we can't make the determination because of the size and magnitude of the project, the wetlands that are present, the traffic potential there, the demand for the water and sewer, et cetera. I'm, from my perspective, thinking that we would be going in a pause deck direction and that we would be requiring a draft environmental impact statement. But board members, let me know what your thoughts are. But again, that was where I've been. And I think even though we haven't said it explicitly, I think the board in general has been kind of thinking the same thing. But if you think differently, let us know, please.
Would that kind of environmental impact statement be proposed or presented with the proposed text amendment that's going along with this application? And not review, or?
So if your lead agency as the planning board, the project does include the zoning amendment to increase the height. So the environmental impact statement and the scope would have to also cover that zoning amendment for the whole zoning district. So,
But ultimately, it would be the town board that would have to approve that text amendment, right?
the town board, exactly, they'd have to ultimately approve the law, but you'd be acting as lead agency for the environmental review of the law.
Right, so they're an involved agency. They'll be part of the seeker process. They get all the documents. They make their own comments, so they provide comments as part of the seeker process, but we're approving the actual project and they're approving the zoning amendment. Anybody else have questions or comments?
I just want to bring up the two kind of major issues that I haven't seen resolution on, which is the lot coverage percentage, you know, with the pervious area that's proposed on the site, and then the parking calculation and the, you know, the overflow.
So if we,
I was going to say, with regards to the lot coverage, we are reviewing different options for a grass paver. We're going to present that, or we're going to present a report of that to the building inspector for his interpretation.
Okay.
okay. Anybody else?
Why would that go to the building inspector and not to Sean for review for his interpretation for lot? We're talking about the approval of grass pavers.
So the question is whether the building inspector has already determined that that type of permeable or pervious pavers, they still count towards lot coverage the way it's defined in the town code. So the applicant's aware of that. They have indicated they want to try and submit something that perhaps, you know, he would feel differently about. So that's what they're trying to do there. But ultimately, you know, whichever way he comes back, it'll have to, you know, be approved by this board and be reviewed by Sean as well. And that's, again, a big issue that I think you should really push, Caleb, is, you know, getting that resolved. If you need to apply, we did include the zoning board as an involved agency, but it would be a pretty substantial variance, I think. So if you were going to need to apply for that, those are all things we're going to need to know as sooner rather than later.
We hope at the next meeting to have this clarified, to see in which direction we're going.
Yeah, and even though ultimately, whether it's considered pervious or not, I think the bigger question is whether the planning board would accept that type of surface for parking areas. And I think it's going to depend on where it's used. And so it's not just about the building inspector and the interpretation, but it's also about whether the planning board would even determine that use of those are reasonable, especially if they're going to be regularly used, given, you know, the seasonality of our area and whether it makes sense when we have winter conditions and et cetera.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's a good point, Bonnie. And your code does speak about, you know, having the parking areas be suitably paved and all requirements like that this board has jurisdiction over that they'll have to review.
Right. Anybody else? All right, so I think in the meantime, again, we're going to be putting the team together. We're going to reach out to the planning board. We'll ultimately have the planning board's authorization and an agreement as far as the people who will be assisting the town in that review. And because when we get our responses back, and if we do become lead agency, we want to start the scoping process. And in the meantime, Sean and planning board members, if there are additional comments on the layout itself, we ultimately want enough information on the layout so that it can be evaluated properly as part of the seeker process. So we need enough information that we're not going into the seeker process with just, you know, a sketch plan. We want more detail than that from my perspective. All right.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. Jay, and do you have any comments? Jay, you've been very quiet.
It's on mute.
You're muted.
I'm fine. I'm
Okay.
here.
Okay, very good. All right, folks. So I think that's it. As far as our official agenda. So thank you, everybody who attended for Monroe Commons. Stay safe and healthy, and we'll see you at the next workshop meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And then Joel, you're going to hang out so we can quickly talk about Joel Stossel.
Correct.
So board members, this isn't actually on the agenda, but as you're aware, we've had that application for the urgent care facility that is on 208 over by the tile place. And the applicant has been wanting to install a ramp, as well as the fact that we had architectural review of that particular project. And I think where we left it was essentially the board had come to some conclusions and consensus on the architectural aspect of the building. But what we've been waiting for is to get a site plan document which correctly identifies what they're trying to do with the improvements, especially in the front of the building. What we discovered at our last meeting is that the applicant had indicated they were only looking to put a handicap ramp in, but as we evaluated the site plan they submitted, in fact, it looked like they were changing the layout of the driveway, removing some parking spaces to be able to accommodate, I think, a larger pedestrian landing in front of the building. And so the applicant has said that was not the intent and that they only wanted to put a ramp in. And we have then subsequently gotten other materials, but not, frankly, a site plan. And we're not necessarily looking, especially if it's only a ramp they're putting in and they're not changing anything else, we're just looking for a portion of the site and a site plan for the improvements. So Sean had been really working with, I guess, the architects who had been retained to help them out. And again, we weren't sure that we were communicating well enough that they understood what the needs were to progress this project and approve it. So I had actually reached out to Joel thinking that he might be able to help them out. So we're not going to review the project or the substance of it, but we just want to make sure, Joel, that you understand what the board's looking for so we can get them finished up here.
Right. So what from the material I had received from the client, it's basically architectural plans showing the ramp details and all the code review. There is on the plan, they are also showing the curb line and how the ramp is landing down on the landing and where they're extending a little bit the sidewalk. Now on the previous plans, I understand that probably the ramp was designed to change the driveway. But however, looking at the new plans, what you have for you, my understanding that you have the last plans for you, it seems that they are now keeping exactly the curb, and they are keeping, sorry, they're keeping all the parking spaces. Actually, they have restriped the spaces and handicapped spaces recently, as per the request from the building inspector, added the handicap parking signs. So the question is, there is no site plan. No one did a site plan. The architect who did that job took measurements of the curb and the building, and it seems to fit. I looked at the site. I was actually on the site, measured a couple measurements. So the question to you is, if we can compare that with pictures, if that will be enough, or you need a survey, whatever, and adding the ramp on a site plan and showing and proving to the board that nothing is being altered.
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, photos alone are not going to suffice. I think we need some kind of, yeah, I mean,
that was the conversation back and forth. That's where I see from the people. Yeah, okay.
Right, so I just think we need a plan. It doesn't, from my perspective, have to be the entire site, but it needs to be the front of the building. It needs to be, if there's sidewalk being added, its relationship to the handicap parking spaces. It needs to show that, you know, there aren't any other changes other than, you know, the handicap ramp and the sidewalk. And I think it's important because there's other things going on in front of the building, including there's another kind of sidewalk that comes in from the handicapped area and it goes kind of below grade.
Yes, it ran down to the basement level, correct?
Right, exactly. So we just want to make sure all of that's coordinated and we want to see that on a measured plan. That's my expectation. Board members or Sean or Ashley, I don't know if you have any other thoughts, Anthony.
That's more or less what I relayed to Miriam, Joel, from the architect's office today. I did explain to her that, you know, we had reviewed pictures that Bonnie had taken and that were submitted on behalf of the architectural review. But I explained to her that we were looking for a survey, you know, a surveyed site plan, and that picture would not suffice. So.
The only question is if a survey, you need something certified. That's basically so, or otherwise I can do something close on the building, not close, but very accurate on the building and the curbs in this area. The question will be how fast I can get the surveyor out due to this situation now. So the question will be if measurements from my office will be fine, or you need a full, whatever, a survey on the building or the property. It doesn't matter. Once I have a surveyor, it doesn't matter. I can have the full property.
I would, Bonnie, you articulated that, you know, what I was feeling about those plans, and I recall some confusion about some of the lines on the plan, whether they were existing or pre-existed on another site plan, on the original site plan. So that should be clarified. And I would say that our review, if you showed some dimension lines from the ramp to the existing edge of curb, or from the building to the existing edge of curb, so we can get some perspective.
Okay.
I think pictures would help too, but I agree that we should have a site plan.
I have something to say. Remember there was the what looked like a pipe that was dug out? Has that been resolved? Is that something we want to see?
Yeah, these are the type of issues though. I really just want to keep this to the procedural issues and what we're looking for. I mean, that's definitely a substantive issue we have to talk about. But just so Joel's here now, he's representing the applicant, just really to help figure out what it is exactly we're looking for. Okay. So we could talk about that at the next meeting.
Yeah.
But I would say that the plan needs to be, you know, stamped by a surveyor or an architect or an engineer. So
no problem. We'll get a plan, an existing survey, and then the proposed additions to the plan.
And if you could make sure. So the last plan, we had I guess it was called the survey, and they had showed on that a lot of interior, you know, floor plan things that aren't necessary.
Yeah, no, it's actually from the architect, not from a surveyor, not from an engineer. So we'll get something from a surveyor or engineer or both together. We'll get something.
Okay, and just go on there that the windows are being, the windows covered up, because that's the architectural element, and the colors.
I would just suggest that it is done by a surveyor so that the topography can be picked up, since we are talking about a ramp, changing elevation. So.
Okay. Ashley, what did you refer to the architecturals? Is there anything on the architecturals you still need, or there's just questions what will need to be discussed at the meeting?
So they had shown on the last plan we had reviewed, they had marked showing, you know, where the windows were that were covered up. So if that could just carry over to whatever you're going to be submitting. And I think there was one area where the color, was it the back of the building maybe, Bonnie, that there was just,
well, I know
the color of that, just to note that on the plans. We could, you know, do it in the resolution if needed, but.
Yeah, I think we had talked about and discussed what the colors would be. Everybody in general felt that the siding, for instance, that was in the back was okay, but we didn't want to see boarded up windows, that the siding had to be carried across. We talked about the other side that's facing 208. Again, what the colors would be. I think it was a combination of white and brown, perhaps. So just to point out, you know, how these areas will be taken care of, and that they'll be updated and they'll be done. As part of the improvements.
So is there a type of plan, what you need, or you have already a plan and it will be discussed?
I don't think we received the plan. We didn't receive elevations. I don't know that we need elevations, but we at a minimum need some kind of narrative that describes the building and that talks about what will be done as far as the improvements to achieve what we discussed about in terms of our architectural review and approval. I mean, does that seem reasonable, Ashley? And maybe that's an area where if you do the narrative, you can rely on some photos. And
suppose the architectural review aspect of it, then that I think is, that's fine. You just need to show, if you're doing on the site plan, you could even just show on there what's going to be covered, what colors they're going to be. But I think a narrative would be helpful. Another question that had come up was just what are the lighting fixtures? They added lights. We just need to know what they are to make sure they're, compliant.
And that they're downlit.
Yeah, just the lighting spec and make sure that they're all, because that's something you have to approve as well. So I think it's really the site plan, some kind of survey showing the actual ramp, those details, that portion of the site, and then also a narrative and I think pictures and description of colors and lighting for architectural review would be, that could all be part of the same site plan, or it could be explained separately.
Yeah, we can have pictures with notes on it and show exactly each site and each area, what it's going to be. Maybe something, we'll figure out something. Okay.
Okay.
So I got the point. So in general, it's the site plan, the lights, and the colors. Do you have any is there any minutes from the last meetings where I can see, read at least the board's concerns?
The last
We had
meeting
had,
that-
yeah, I don't know if we captured that for the last meeting on the
We-
recording or if that's where it
we
cut off.
did. It was only the Walmart meeting that we had some.
Okay.
I don't
So-
think there's minutes prepared yet, but the recording, I believe, is available on.
I believe it
online
on the town's website. Yes.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. I have, so my understanding was that once I have all the items submitted, depends on the timing, you might schedule a special meeting for that or something?
Yeah, we had actually planned on doing that for them. And again, we were just getting some confusion on their side, what had to be submitted. So, get us what, we need. We acknowledge they're a medical facility. We were trying to expedite them. And so as soon as we get something, we'll look at the schedule and see where we are.
Thank you very much. Cool.
Yes.
Yeah, just for my purposes, one of my biggest concerns in everything we've been presented so far is it's just not clear with the handicap ramp what the dimensions of everything are, and are they really ADA compliant? And I think that's also something that came out of the review from Orange County. And so for me, the priority is to see that the ramp that they're proposing is appropriate and again meets that ADA compliance. That's what I'm looking for.
Mm-hmm.
There's two things on that. One, you have a plan stamped by an architect, so probably they did a code review and they did it according to code. The second thing, as Sean said, that once I'm doing the survey, I will have the topo so you can second guess the dimensions to see if the ramp really works with the slope.
And ultimately, that the ramp for ADA compliance will be reviewed by Ben. The building.
Right. Okay.
Okay.
And that would be a condition of any resolution that it has to be ADA compliant.
Okay.
Anybody else? Anybody else have comments? No? Okay, Joel, you're good to go. You know what has to get done?
To go, I have to guess. I need to do some homework. No problem.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very much. Have a good night, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you.
Stay safe. All right, board members, that was the last item that we were going to cover. Anything that needs to be discussed? Any comments? We're good? Okay. So with that, I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting. May I have a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor, raise your hand. Okay. I don't see anybody opposed. So with that, the motion carries and we're adjourned. Thank you all and stay safe and have a fantastic weekend.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Good night, guys.
Good night.
Bye.